I'm excited for our guest here, Schultz. I've talked about the Senior Bowl. It's got me. Its hooks are in. Its teeth has sunk into the neck. I'm all in. I love the Mobile, Alabama Senior Bowl. It's become quite the event. Trevor Sikkema of PFF, their lead draft analyst, is joining us. He's on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey. You can find his great work at PFF.com. Trevor, good morning. Thanks for hopping on with us. I said on Monday, this event feels like it's been big, but it feels like it's growing every single year, and in a lot of ways, kind of rivaling the Combine.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me, and I completely agree. This year in particular, I think you looked at this roster on paper coming into the week, and I've been doing this full time. This is my 7th Senior Bowl, I believe, so I've been doing this a little bit now. I think top to bottom, this is the most talented Senior Bowl roster that I've ever seen. And obviously you have, like some of the guys will drop out before the event starts, like some will get hurt and kind of be out of the lineup. So maybe the game won't have as much of the product as we thought before the week began. But still, even the fact that there were all those stacked players accepting these invites to be able to play at this event, what we saw out on the field, I think, was just a testament to the work that Jim Nagy and his staff have put together here for the Senior Bowl and putting together, like you said, a really, really great product. The Combine it's a different feel. You get more interviews from these players. You're learning more about who they are as a person, and you get some of that athletic testing, of course, but the pads are still on at this event. Like, you get real football at this event, and I think both of those things are very important when it comes to a lot of people turning the page, a lot of casual fans, if you will, of the draft, kind of turning the page from the regular season, getting into draft season. It's a great way to intro a lot of these guys that are in this class.
I want to get to some of the names for us out here on the West Coast that we're familiar with and how they're performing, but I want to ask you something you just hit on there. Was the expectation going into it, Trevor, that this was going to be the most talented, or is it something that as soon as the guys got there and padded up, a lot of people, including maybe yourself, just thought, oh man, this is a little different than this is the best one? Did you think that going in?
Yeah, so with my title at Pro Football Focus, I do a lot of draft work year-round, and so I'm kind of building out the big board and the prospect list pretty early. I'm doing a lot of that in October and November, so I was very familiar with a lot of these players, so I was super impressed. But even that being the case, I think a lot of people who, again, like I said, are getting an introduction into this draft class for the first time got a real treat. And, with the COVID year still existing for a lot of these guys in college football, you have these players who have that extra year of experience. Maybe in previous seasons, maybe they would have had to come out last year, but they had that extra year of eligibility. So it's another year to work, another year to get better. I think about guys like, Christian Jones from Texas, a 5-year starter at offensive tackle, who you go, man, okay, experience, but why isn't he in the NFL yet? What's going on? Well, this past year was his best year yet, and he's out here at the Senior Bowl playing very, very well. So might have been a little bit of an afterthought, but that extra year, getting to see him out here in Mobile, it's something that was proven very valuable. So I think the combination of all of those things has made for a really talented group this year.
Trevor Sikkema is our guest here, PFF.com, lead draft analyst, as he noted there. So he's been following this stuff year-round all the time, and now he's down in Mobile, Alabama, as we got the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl, and I can't wait to see it Saturday at 10 a.m. Let's start with a local player. I was texting with a friend of mine who covers some recruiting-based stuff up here in the Pacific Northwest, and he said that I don't know if a player's made more money for themselves than Jackson's Power Johnson, who's just outperforming a lot of metrics and just the way kind of people viewed him going into the event. There's some video clips that have circulated, just overpowering defensive linemen. What have you made from the center from Oregon and Powers Johnson and how he's been performing?
Yeah, he's been awesome. He was a top 60 player for us on our big board going into the week. And so, it's not like this guy was seen as a day 3 player and has vaulted himself up to top 50 status. But still, there were questions about Jackson Powers Johnson specifically. Oregon's got him listed at a pretty heavy weight, which you'd like to see as an interior offensive lineman, especially when you turn on the film and see how well he moves. He did measure in at, I believe, 6'3", 335 pounds, which is big for a center and an offensive guard. But again, you get out there, the pads come on, he looks like he's moving at 310. He looks like he's 25 pounds lighter. And so it's those light feet, the coordinated feet combined with that power that he's got and that giant barrel of a chest that he has. I mean, he was stopping people with power. He was stopping people with speed. And so he was super, super impressive. But another question that he answered this week is, okay, we know what you can do at center. We've seen it on tape at Oregon. But this event is great for putting guys in different situations, right? Outside corners, they'll put them in the slot to see what they do there. Guys who are more off coverage players, they'll put them in press coverage to see how they do there. On the offensive line, you go, okay, well, if this guy's got some versatility, let's put him at all these spots. So he got reps not only at center, but at guard as well. He still looked just as comfortable, just as confident. And I think that you mentioned it. He was one of the biggest winners. Not that he took the biggest leap up the big board, but I think he solidified himself as a first-round pick this week.
His teammate, the one that he was hiking the ball to, had a nice little 2-year turnaround for his career. He wanted to be at Auburn for his whole life, and that was the place. It didn't go quite how he thought. He comes out to Eugene, Bo Nix, and he has a Heisman campaign. What have you made of Bo Nix? I know he's a little older than most of the seniors and even most of the prospects. He's in college. You like the process, like playing in college football. What have you made of Bo Nix, and how has he looked out there?
So I like Nix. I really do. I thought that he's kind of a fringe first-round quarterback for a while now. And, this week, it was a slow build for him. I thought that he ended well yesterday in the final practice on Thursday. But at the beginning of the week, I just felt like he was tight. Like he wasn't playing loose. I watched, there's a couple of underthrows from him. He wasn't letting it rip. I feel like he was thinking too much about it. And that can sometimes happen in events like this where it's a job interview, right? That every snap that you take is being evaluated. The media part of this is so big now that everyone's got a camera out recording what you're doing 24/7 when you're at one of these events, especially when you're out on the field. The scouts are paying close attention. So they know every rep matters. And that can be something that is a lot of pressure. And so I would have liked for Nix to come out and play a little bit more relaxed, but I think you did see a little bit of that on day 3 on Thursday. I felt like he ended the week, I feel, at least with his strongest day, but the accuracy wasn't as good as I've seen from him on tape, simply because I think he was playing a little wound up too tight. He wasn't playing as loose. So we'll see how he plays in the game this upcoming weekend.
We're talking with Trevor Sikkema, PFF lead draft analyst on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey. Go find his latest work at PFF.com. He's covering and following the Senior Bowl, which the game is on Saturday on the NFL Network. An offensive lineman in our state, but for a different team, Talise Fuaga. He was a beast in Corvallis. There was no questioning the greatness that he was showing on that offensive line, and that offensive line group was, some of the best groups in college football during his time in Corvallis. He is, I think, a lot of mock drafts that get released here, Trevor, and I'm always curious how you interpret people throwing out mock drafts, given that you cover this stuff year-round. He's anywhere from like a 12 to 21 range type guy in the first round. How has he performed in Mobile?
Yeah, so Fuaga has been one of my favorite guys in this draft class for a while. And not to stake my claim on, I was first on him. That's not what I mean when I say that. But I have the luxury of getting some eyes on these guys pretty early. And I actually didn't know Fuaga wasn't really on my radar going into the season. And actually a buddy of mine who follows college football very closely, he's like, hey, you got to take a look at this right tackle. He's draft eligible from Oregon State. And he's kicking ass out there. And I was like, all right. So I turn on the tape and I go, whoa, okay. We're talking about this is a future NFL offensive tackle with how well he was playing. So before the rest of, I'd say like a lot of the media, even draft media, kind of got their big boards and their rankings out and things like that, I had him ranked pretty high. And this has happened before. I've seen, okay, I really like this guy's tape. He's going to be higher on my big board. But sometimes you get mock drafts from, say, Daniel Jeremiah or, Mel Kiper. These guys who are very plugged in, where they do mock drafts, not just from what they're seeing from these guys, but also what they are hearing from NFL teams, from scouts, and where they think a guy is going to land. And it's not always that lines up. Sometimes I'm just a lot higher on a guy than it seems like the NFL is going to be. But we've got those mock drafts that are now out, some of those rankings that are out. And Fuaga did end up being a top 20 player for that. And it made me happy because I'm like, good. He is a great football player, and I was really excited to see him at the Senior Bowl event. He did not disappoint. He won with power so much. I mean, he is such a dictating type of offensive tackle. It's something I loved about Darnell Wright last year from Tennessee, the guy who goes top 12 in last year's draft. Even in pass blocking, he brings the fight to you. He is dictating the contact. He is dictating things with power. But we even saw some speed offensive linemen try to get the better of him going up the arc, around the outside shoulder. And yet he had the quick footwork to beat guys to the spot, beat guys to the angle, to his landmark, if you will. And I think he checked those boxes as well. So to me, he went into this event as a potential top 20 pick. I don't think he did anything to change that, and I still think that's the range for him moving forward.
Wow, that's great stuff to hear, because I think a lot of Beaver fans are rooting hard for him. He had a great career at Oregon State. You mentioned Bo Nix and being a little tight. His counterpart from Washington, who bested Nix and his team bested Nix in the Pac-12 title game, Michael Penix Jr. had a nice season for himself. There are obvious injury concerns, I think, from the NFL scouting departments, and he's also a little bit older than normal quarterbacks, obviously staying in college football and transferring. What did you make of Michael Penix? How are people perceiving Michael Penix? Is it system label guy, or is it no, arms very different, accuracy is pinpoint? How did Penix, how has he fared so far in these one-on-ones, these matchups, these practices?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not really worried about the age. I'm not. I mean, we're living in a world where you've got quarterbacks playing well into their late 30s, sometimes in the rare instances, even 40s. And so I think I understand why people bring this up, but I do think it's a little strange how much people harp on, Penix, he's going to be an older prospect. I mean, who cares? He could be 2 contracts in and still be, 34, 35 years old. And so if you get a decade out of a player, no matter where you draft him in the NFL draft, that is a success. So I'm not really worried about that, especially where the position is going. But I thought the Penix had a good week. He's got those long arms, measuring with super long arms. He's got that unorthodox release, but that ball just rockets off of his hand. And I think you were able to see that during the practice portions here. And he wasn't throwing next to Joe Milton. Joe Milton from Tennessee was on the other team, but those two guys had the strongest arms of the players that were here. But I think that Penix was more impactful with his arm strength, more accurate with his arm strength. Now, it still wasn't perfect. That's an issue that I think a lot of people have noted in their scouting reports, is ball placement can sometimes be an issue. With those longer arms, it is a longer release. It is more things that could potentially go wrong with how you are motioning the football up past your shoulder and when it's coming out of your hand. And so Penix just has to deal with that, having the longer arm. But it was very clear, him in that quarterback group with Bo Nix and even Sam Hartman as well, that Penix had that stronger NFL-type arm. He's got that NFL-type velocity. And I think overall, he probably had the best week of any of the quarterbacks there. Not that it was, far and away incredible, but I still think if you believe that he was a fringe first-rounder, you can still hold on to that. If you believe that he was, more of a day 2 pick, I think there are reasons where that was fortified. So I just feel as though it's kind of status quo for Michael Penix, but that's not to say it still can't be a first-round pick. I still think there is a chance that could be the case, even with his age and eligibility, or his age and his injury history, given what we saw from him this past season at Washington.
I appreciate you saying what you said at the beginning there. When I read these mocks, Trevor, I always, he is a little older. I appreciate you saying, who cares? Because I've kind of had that thought, but when people are covering it saying, well, he's a little older, I'm just like, okay, I guess I'll throw that into consideration for whatever reason. So I appreciate you kind of making me dismiss it now. I don't care anymore. Your coverage has been fantastic, man. We're already against it, so I have millions of questions. I'd love to catch up with you around the combine or closer to the draft, because you're really informative. You're really plugged in on this stuff. And the closer we get to the draft, we could talk about some of the other players that aren't seniors or in Mobile, Alabama, and how you feel about all of them. So thanks for hopping on the show this morning, man. Great insight and great coverage.
Yeah, of course, guys. Anytime. Looking forward to hopping back on with you.
All right, there we go. Good stuff. Trevor Sikkema of PFF, lead draft analyst, with a check-in from Mobile, Alabama. We got the Senior Bowl on Saturday at 10.